Hi, everyone.
Hi,
My name
everyone.
my name is Sarah Kelly Palmer.
And I'm Kayla David.
It's nice to see you all again. Welcome. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Kayla and I are part of the healing department at Family Service of Rhode Island, and we come together as part of our Be Well RI Live series to bring you information and have various discussions about how to cope in the COVID-19 crisis that we're all experiencing. We do want to ask you one favor today for those of you who are watching us. If you could take the time to share this with your friends and families, or maybe even start a watch party, that would help us get the word out and also help us to share this information with a larger audience.
Yes, and we come together every Wednesday at 10 a.m. for this discussion. And today we're really pleased to welcome a special guest, um, Ryan Loiselle. He's from one of our community partners. He's a licensed independent clinical social worker, and he's from Friendsway. Friendsway is Rhode Island's only children's bereavement center dedicated to serving children, teens, and their families impacted by loss. We are very happy to have Ryan here to share some thoughts and information about grief and loss during COVID-19. Welcome, Ryan.
Good morning.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
welcome, Ryan. Ryan, we thought that before we jumped into our discussion, we would really love for you to take a minute or two to share what Friendsway's mission is and the services that you offer.
Sure. So as you mentioned, we are Rhode Island's only children's bereavement center dedicated to serving children and teens and their families ages 3 through 18 after a significant death has happened. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm the program director and oversee the program, but our services are not clinical. Our services are provided by our trained volunteers who've gone through an extensive training, background check, and they are the ones who are facilitating our peer groups. So we start off our evening with dinner to break bread, have pizza, salad, everything. And then our children's groups and teen groups go downstairs in our building. So preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school, generally serving about 20 to 25 families per night, upwards of about 40 kids. And the adult caregiver group also gets to meet to share their experiences and how to best help their kids. So we meet every other week throughout the school year. Our services, again, are at no cost to our families. We are affiliated with Gateway Healthcare as well as Lifespan.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. And we know that the COVID-19 crisis has brought up many difficult experiences for people. We know that there's changes in their routines, there's financial uncertainty, lack of physical connection, fear of getting sick or family members becoming ill, and most significantly, the death of friends and loved ones. Loss and grief are topics that many parents have a difficulty approaching. It can feel overwhelming to take on the topic of death and dying, what to say, how to say it, concerns about getting questions that maybe we don't know how to answer. And so and with that, those really big emotions that kids have in response to a loss. For you, Ryan, what are you seeing or what might be kind of coming up for adults and kids related to grief and loss in COVID-19?
So, like everybody, we are in all virtual sessions. It's different and it's a little weird. When you're used to seeing and touching and playing with
Mhm,
kids and putting your hand out to offer comfort on their shoulder,
mhm,
we can't do that. So we've been doing virtual groups now for about 5 weeks, and we've noticed attendance isn't as we would normally have it in person. I think a lot of it is due to oversaturation with screen time.
mhm,
And I think most of the time, because we are in this COVID-19 situation, families aren't typically talking about the grief that they're experiencing with the death. They're really talking about their grief of what they don't have anymore.
mhm.
They're talking about if school was a safe space for their kids can't go to school. They can't see their friends. And, certainly for some kids, if home is too much of a reminder and they don't want to always talk about the person who died, if they're being pressured or seeing different, things in different rooms, or they're cleaning out closets and they're doing things that, they wouldn't normally be doing, it's certainly making it harder. So I think people are feeling very disconnected and not knowing what to do and how to feel the feelings that they have.
Well, and Ryan, you came up with something really important for me in that moment, was that we've lost a lot of things, even if we haven't lost loved ones, and then that can be so much more complicated with the loss of someone.
Absolutely. And I think I was in our adult caregiver group last night, and even seeing the daily debriefings and to see the death count going up in our state and in our nation, some people need to turn it off, and you have that permission to disconnect, to turn off if you can't bear it anymore, to find something, sillier or more entertaining to do.
Ryan, I think one of the questions that we've been getting a lot and do get is from parents and caregivers is if they're, let's say your child does kind of walk in and they see that death toll, or maybe you are in the midst of this COVID-19, people might have lost a loved one to death, not even COVID related, but life does go on. So people die. So one of the questions we get a lot from parents is, how do I talk to my child about a death? And in our first segment, Kayla and I we talked about how to talk to kids in general about COVID-19. And we actually had a coworker that used an example when she was telling her young children about the virus. She used a description that it was a bug. And her child actually really thought that COVID-19 was carried around by bugs, right?
Right.
So that's one of the biggest questions we get is, what specific language do we use with kids if a loss or death has occurred, COVID-19 related or not? How can we talk to our kids about it?
Sure. So at Friendsway, and we're modeled after a national center, the Dougie Center, and we use very concrete language. So we're using the words death and died. We're not using euphemisms. We're not saying that, we lost grandpa. There's a great cartoon piece that will show like someone on the phone, like, if we just lost grandpa, why aren't we looking for him? So kids pay specific attention to language. Saying that they died in their sleep, your child is now fearful of going to sleep. So any age, I mean, obviously it's different, with preschoolers up through high school, but when you're telling a child that someone important in your life has died, doing it in a very supportive environment, no distractions, a place that feels safe, because we want to instill safety with these kids, and letting them know that I've got something really sad to tell you, and that grandpa died last night. And then pausing and waiting and seeing the kids' response. These kids are going to dictate what they need. And then based on their response, they'll say, well, how did he die? And then if it was cancer, or if it was the flu, or if it was COVID, then you give them things incrementally, pausing and waiting for their reaction, and not filling their head with all of these extra language words and things that they're not going to understand, and then let them sit with it. And then it doesn't mean it's done. Again, the younger kids aren't quite going to understand. They're going to run outside and play, and then they'll come back and be like, wait a minute, so does that mean he's not going to be at my soccer games anymore? So again, they don't understand the finality of death, certainly for the younger kids. So again, it's for the parents and guardians, they're retelling the story a lot because the kids don't have that permanency. But again, doing it in a supportive way, knowing that tears may happen, knowing that outbursts may happen, the feelings that are inside are just going to become outside of them.
Thank you, Ryan. And we actually just got a comment that relates to a question that I had for you. The comment was, we lost a close member of our family, someone young, to COVID-19. It's been heartbreaking because we can't have a funeral. And to our daughter, it feels like that person has just disappeared from our lives. In the midst of COVID-19, families do not have the ability to access traditional rituals that often assist with the grieving process. So We think funerals or memorial services, or even just gathering together or going to a person's home, seeing loved ones. If a family has experienced a loss during this time, what advice, Ryan, would you share that might help them with that grieving process?
So it's still important to show up. And showing up doesn't necessarily have to be in person. We all want to be there. We all want to show that a life was well lived, and to grieve as a community is so important, but we can't right now. But it doesn't mean that you can't call, text, resort to sending a Hallmark card. And not just in the days that follow, but weeks later, months later, on their birthday, on Mother's Day, on Father's Day. There are some really creative people doing artwork on the chalk on sidewalks, and they're walking by, and we know it's going to rain, and maybe there's a message that they want to drive by the house. We're still thinking of you, drawing a little flower, something, and then the family can come out and see it. If you need to attend, if you're not able to attend the funeral or the wake, doesn't mean you can't still have a line of cars do a procession. It doesn't mean you can wait in the funeral home parking lot and flash your lights as the family is coming out to show that you're still in support, just from a distance. Coordinating meals as people would normally do, like bringing casseroles over, but maybe they can order takeout. Maybe they can figure out, we want to do something special. We have this meal. So again, it's doing the things you used to do, just doing them differently. But show up, help these grieving families all the time, but especially during this time where we can't grieve together.
I love all that you just shared about that, Ryan. And I think people have gotten, you can see on the news, people have gotten really creative around those rituals. And I think it's so important to encourage that. I'm also wondering, we often hear from parents that, so even after maybe a ritual has occurred or a remembrance, that sometimes parents aren't sure what to do around kind of those ongoing emotions and things that keep showing up for kids. So, the sadness, or like you said, even the outbursts. And we get questions like, should I keep pictures up of that loved one who died, or should I keep talking about them? Because I think parents are often right. We want to make our kids feel better, and sometimes um, keeping someone's memory alive, sometimes that comes with emotion. So, what would you just say to parents to kind of any tips to address kind of those ongoing emotions and things we might see even beyond those rituals?
So we know that kids are sponges,
Mm,
and kids are paying attention to their parents, guardians, grandparents. They're taking their cues.
mhm,
So hopefully the parent, again, if they're crying, we always say, again, it's scared to see a parent cry. But if the child doesn't know why they're crying, that makes it even scarier. So we encourage parents and guardians to say, I'm crying today, it's Mother's Day soon, and
mhm,
I'm really missing your mom.
mhm.
Verbalize it, talk about it. Because again, if it's not being talked about, kids are going to assume that, all right, this happened, we can't address this anymore.
Mhm,
I don't know why. And again,
mhm.
some people, as you mentioned about pictures or clothing, and when do I clean out
Right.
closets?
Yeah.
There's no definitive answer. You're going to do it on your time, and ask the kids if the whole, living room is like this family shrine. Maybe that's uncomfortable. Maybe you talk about it to say,
Mhm,
what's it like to have these pictures up?
mhm,
Do you find it helpful? Would you want to have, this picture of mom in your room? Would that be more helpful?
mhm.
Um, so again, it's verbalizing, it's bringing the elephant into the room and talking about it,
Yeah.
because these kids are curious. And again, we stress and stress that it's so important for the adults to seek help for themselves, because
Mhm.
it's going to indicate how the kid's well-being is going to happen. If the adult is willing to reach out for services, to say, I'm not sure what's happening, my kid might
Mhm.
need some help.
So, Ryan, that brings up a question that I think so many people have, which is that we know that the grieving process is normal. We know it's not linear, even if that might be kind of the message, kind of the societal message that we go through stages, right? We know that that's not true. There's going to be days that are up, there's going to be days that are down. But I think one of the questions that comes up a lot for people is when would it be helpful, or when might it be helpful to reach out for professional support or reach out for help?
Sure. So I always say if it's on your mind, if you're wondering if I need help, then do it.
Mm,
Either that person themselves, or if you're not in the position to tell your story over the phone and talk it through with somebody, if somebody else can do that for you, awesome. So reach out to, to a therapist, to,
mhm,
call centers. I think the important thing to know is, again, our services are not clinical. So we are typically not your first stop. Again, grief is not on a timeline, but generally speaking, families may hear of us very soon after, or I'll do consultations about how to explain death to your child, but we're
mhm,
not going to have them start in our group, days or weeks after the death. It's typically, several weeks, several months, and sometimes it's even several years after. But
mhm,
again, if you're watching and are feeling like I don't know if I need this. My kid looks okay. That's the parent's perspective of putting yourself into your child's body based on your experiences. So you have lived experiences, you think, well, I would behave in this certain way. Why is my kid not eating? Why are they irritable? Why aren't they sleeping? Oh, they've had all these changes happen, and their brother used to sleep in their room, and now he doesn't want to sleep in there. So again, pay attention to all those things, pay attention to your mental health, and reach out for help.
Ryan, so we know Friends Way is an amazing resource here in Rhode Island. And are there other resources out there that you can share for families who have experienced a loss, maybe due to COVID-19 or not, just in general, for other reasons that you could share?
Sure. Well, again, prior to Friends Way, I worked for hospice. So hospice is a
Mhm,
great organization
mm,
nationally, internationally as well. As I mentioned, we're affiliated with the Dougie Center. So on our website at friendsway.org is a link to the Dougie Center, the National Children's Bereavement Center in Portland, Oregon. Vast resources translated in many languages to offer, help to those who certainly, English may not be their primary language.
mhm,
And then from there you can access, whatever state you're in, and find your grief center. And we're also part of the National Alliance for Grieving Children. And through COVID-19, we've had webinars, weekly with
mhm,
program directors and in services and things to help the frontline workers cope and deal. Like, how do we develop new programming for our kids? How do we help them with accessing additional services? So we're sharing people, and there are families that might call me to say, I'm in Florida, but how do I find somebody
mhm.
in a different state? And I'll help direct them over the phone. I'll email them the link. And so again, there is help out there for you.
Ryan, it sounds like the most important thing we can do is to not assume and just to talk about it. And Sarah and I have talked about this with how to talk to kids about COVID-19, having, parents taking that first step, being the ones to bring up the conversation, being the ones to check in, and it not being a one and done conversation, but kind of coming back to that conversation or having an ongoing conversation.
Right. Because grief doesn't end. So you can't have a conversation, answer a question, and close a book and be like, great, I'm so glad I
Mhm,
never have to deal with that all over
mhm,
again.
mm.
Again, especially the younger kids, they're going to come back like, is daddy done being dead? Because I saw on a cartoon or I'm playing in my video games that this happened. And again, it is tiring for our parents and guardians. But again, stick with it. Talk to your kids because they are learning to figure out what's happening. They learn through play, they're learning through all these different things that they need to figure out.
Ryan, we had a question in the chat, and it was about where can we access those webinars for professionals? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So if you go to childrengrieve.org, which is the National Alliance for Grieving Children, you are welcome as an organization or an individual to become a member. And right now, through the COVID-19, we have a few organizations. One is Alex Cares that is sponsoring some webinars for free. So you can go on there, you can, download and read up on the ones that have already been done. They're doing some, things weekly. So anybody, general public can go to childrengrieve.org to check that out.
Great, thank you. And we'll also post any resources. We'll post resources to Friendsway. We'll post resources after this. So we will also post that Children's Grieve website. So
Great.
Ryan, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank all of you for tuning in. Each week we'll be addressing topics related to COVID-19. So if there is a topic you're interested in, please leave us a comment or DM us and let us know what you are interested in hearing about. In the weeks to come, we are excited to look at topics related to online safety, bring special guests on to talk about distance learning and how to express our feelings when words are not enough. So we are excited to bring some of those topics to you in the coming weeks. So again, we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. And for now, be well and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.